Keith, welcome to the Vibrant Couple. I interview experts in relationships to better support my listeners and viewers on how to deal with the ups and downs of their own relationships. Please say more about what you do because I'm very curious.
So I run a coaching business called Awaken Intimacy. I also have a company called the Open Institute, and my work revolves primarily around intimacy, communication, sexuality, masculinity, and so that how that actually looks in fact is I do one-on-one coaching with men and women. I coach couples working to deepen their relationships, their sexuality, deepen in love. And through the Open Institute, I host workshops in person in Boulder, Colorado, where I and my business partner, Michaela, lead people through actual exercises with other people in more of a workshop space to have a potent kind of present moment experience with polarity, with sexuality, with intimacy. And a lot of the workshop space revolves around reframing how people come and view sexuality and intimacy. My experience has been that a lot of people, myself included, have carried a lot of shame, a lot of hidden parts around sexuality, a lot of stories about what it is and what it isn't, and so just creating spaces for people to kind of unravel it, kind of unroll that historical relationship to intimacy and sexuality, and then really ask themselves like, well, who am I actually as a sexual being? What do I want? What do I desire? How do I want to be with other people? And in a way to kind of create a new roadmap for themselves and hopefully much more satisfying relationships and sexual experiences.
What kind of results do you get with your clients?
Yeah, so it depends on what kind of clients I'm working with. So, I say they come from a variety of standpoints. Probably the pain point that most people come to me with is something is not working in their intimate relationships. So their love relationships primarily, or they may just be single and struggling to find kind of partnership or relationship that they can actually explore intimacy in. So the results I'm seeing are first for single men, which is probably my most common client, is uncovering like what they actually want in a partner. Because a lot of men grow up with pornography, with media, with television, and they often, my experience shows that they have a kind of a distorted view of what they think they actually want in a partner and the kind of partner that would be good for them. And so a big part of my work is simply first uncovering that, like what are you actually looking for? Like, what is your heart seeking? Or what is your heart and your cock when connected? What are they seeking? And then putting steps in place and challenges for men to um, go out and find that. Um, and so that's a common one with couples. What I often see is couples tend to get into kind of a plateau space or a spot where they often feel stuck. And like, maybe they went through a honeymoon phase, or they've been married for some time and they've gotten into some rhythms or routines, but I would say maybe a state of mediocrity is present in their intimacy, whether it's actual lovemaking or just the aliveness that they feel with each other. And so couples, I'll do a lot of exercises where um, well, basically, I'll rely on the technologies of authentic relating to make the implicit explicit. So what I've seen in couples is you have two people coming at a relationship and making a lot of assumptions about where the other person is, how they think, how they feel, what they want, and these things often are missing each other. And so, a big part of the process is simply naming those, getting them out on the table, And I can't tell you how many times I've heard like, wow, I had no idea that's how you felt, or I had no idea that's what you wanted. And so what I'm trying to do is get the two people to a kind of present moment immediacy, which is a form of intimacy, instead of two people living in their heads about what's happening in the relationship.
And so I've heard two people talking about their assumptions and sharing them and what they want. And so that does not seem to be in the moment. And I also heard you talk about the present moment. How do you do both? Because I believe both are important and somehow difficult to do.
It's a good question. So there is some element of, I would say, like exploring assumptions does have a feeling of like, hey, let's go inside and name them. And then there's something about it's almost like cleaning a pane of glass that's between two people, and it's like kind of foggy and dirty, and so we're not really seeing each other. And so when we check those assumptions out and the ideas that we have about we think our partner desires something that we found out they actually don't, the glass gets clearer, right? And then we can kind of see each other, and then that allows us to be in the present moment. And then I have a number of kind of tools and techniques that I use there, which is what is it like to be with me right now, right? And guiding people through authentic relating tools to present moment communication. So it's not just me telling you my story of my day, you telling me your story of my day. It's two people saying, hey, being with you right now, I feel some warmth in my heart, and I notice some excitement that we're in this call together. Right? And you might say something like, hearing that, I notice something. And so here we are now. This conversation today is going to be different than if we had it tomorrow or in 2 days from now, because of all of the contextual things in our lives that are showing up right now in this moment.
So I'm seeing you light up when you help couples somehow be more present together to each other in the moment. Is that so?
Yeah, and I think I appreciate that you noticed that, because I was just actually on a phone call with my business partner, and we were talking about what kind of offerings we want to create, and what does light us up. And we both agreed that it's watching people pop, so to speak, which is
Hmm.
just exactly this. Like, you guide someone in an exercise, you explain some things to them, and then you put them in the practice, and then they have a kind of epiphany that either just increases their connection to themselves, or if it's a couple situation, to their partner. And that for me is just so deeply satisfying to watch people have that experience, because those are the experiences that I've had over the last decade since I've really committed to this work. And it like created this fire in me that's been like, this is great. There's a different way to have sex. There's a different way to be in an intimate relationship. There's a different way to communicate. It takes a little bit of practice, but we can do it. And so that's just it's my relationships have been so much more deeply satisfying, and that has created the impulse in me to teach and share from that place.
Cool. I work with men and women, couples, singles. One of the things I hear women quite a bit is that men are way too attached to techniques when they want men to be present. And so is that something that you also notice in your practice? And how do you deal with that?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's a very common scenario where a man takes the initiative to say, "Hey, I want to be a better lover in some way," which I commend men who take that step, because very few are willing to do that. But when they do, they come across techniques from different teachers or different lineages, and then in the early phases, it can be a little bit robotic, so to speak, in the sense that maybe they're controlling their breath and their body, and they're if they're with a female partner, she's like, hey, like, are you with me? Where are you? It feels like we're in class right now. And so my encouragement with for most men is, first of all, to do a lot of practices on their own. Like, a lot of these things can be done in forms of solo practice. And then with partners also, like, finding a balance where I may say, honey, like, every third time, we make love, I'm gonna like try some techniques and do some things for like 15 minutes, and then I'm gonna make sure we do the things that we both like. So it's finding, yeah, finding some compromise and not being too rigid. Like remembering that the reason you're doing the techniques is actually to deepen the union with that woman. So if you're doing the techniques and that's creating disconnect, um, maybe you're not coming from exactly the right place or the right intentionality.
So one of the things I'm hearing from the men I work with is that they are turned off by the women who, when their women feel a disconnect. And so, they're very willing or they're somehow willing to do the work, but somehow getting slapped, by when they're trying and, they would love the efforts to be appreciated, but they somehow get slapped because they are not there, not this, not that. So, how do you work with your female or feminine, I should say, because I'm assuming that you also work with some same-sex clients.
First, I would say on the man side, if I was coaching a man in that situation, I would encourage him to see that feedback from his partner rather than as like criticism or something to bring him into a form of like little boy collapse. Is like, hey, this is valuable because like when you're engaged in these intimacy practices, in a way, this your partner is your teacher. She is your feedback system. And so embrace the fact that when she tells you like, hey, I don't feel you present right now, like that's extremely, extremely valuable. Um, and for women, there is a risk of, I would say, being overly critical or kind of being in that, oh, you're not doing it right, this is wrong all the time. And I think for women it's important to remember that like men want to win, and they don't want to win against you, they want to win with you. And so being in that, and taking, so when you're giving feedback or something, like knowing that your man wants to win with you, so providing that feedback in a supportive way so he can do something with it, and potentially shift in a way that's good for both of you. And so that does require some, I would say, some communication skills. It also requires you as a woman sometimes to let your man take the lead and let him sometimes make mistakes. Let him realize he made mistakes without you telling him. Men like to lead. We like to feel like you're following us. And so, of course, if your man's about to take you over a cliff, like you might want to speak up. But whether, maybe he's just going to miss the turn, or his touch is just a little bit off, maybe you give him a moment to course correct himself, and that will feel like a win for him. In a masculine feminine polarity, again, gender doesn't matter. For the purposes of simplifying it, we're kind of conflating masculine with men here, and feminine with women. In that dynamic, the masculine tends to be responsible for the direction, for the depth, for the container. And the feminine is responsible for the energy and for the flow of love and movement. And so that dance is so important for like a rich, alive, intimate sexual connection. If you're sitting in the kitchen table doing the taxes or talking about the bills or where the kids are going to go to college, you don't need polarity in those moments. I remind people that engaging in the game of polarity is often for the intimate space, and but doesn't, we're still human beings living in a world where we're kind of all doing many similar things, and we don't always have to be, like a lot of women would say, I don't want to always follow my man. I know this topic better, right? And it's like, well, then you should do it if you know it better, right? But just know if that when it comes to the bedroom, that may actually damper the intimacy.
One of the things that I'm seeing as well is, the Esther Perel, what women fight in the streets, they want in the sheets. First, do you see that and how do you deal with that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is a very, very common common question, and I would say again, in like most cases, I think it's great for if women are good at what they do and inspired in certain areas of life to like totally take the lead and go. The sky's the limit there. But I meet a lot of women who are very successful in life and in their careers who then struggle finding that partner that can lead them in the bedroom. And so for women, it's actually developing that kind of role shift in the sense of like when I'm going into the office, I can be a certain way, but when I come home, can I find ways to allow my man to lead and to trust him? And so that just it takes practice. I often suggest certain areas where the consequences are kind of not that big a deal. Like let your partner, we're specifically talking about your relationship to your partner when you're this woman, like the truth is most men like aren't good at taking the lead. Men are terrible right now in leadership. And so I'm not saying just let every man you meet lead, like, but if you're choosing one to be in a partnership with and you are a feminine woman, give him that chance. I'll give you an example from my own life. Recently, I was traveling and we were in an Airbnb and we were like checking out, and my partner was like, did you check the sheets to see if like anything was left over? And I was like, yes, I did. And then we're packing up, and then I watch her go in the room and check the sheets. And so that, I basically explained to her, it's like you want me to take the lead in the bedroom, and then when we're out here in the world, you don't even trust me to check the sheets for a lost sock or something like that. And so my encouragement to her was, that's a place where you can kind of trust me and surrender, and maybe you'll lose a sock. I didn't check the sheets well, right? But these more, it sounds like almost a trivial example, but it starts to like just tune the system to the man feeling like, okay, I can take the lead, and the woman being like, I can I can surrender a little bit here.
I love your example because with the women I talk with, it's somehow easy for them to let go of at least a good chunk of the leadership. What I'm noticing is a lot harder for the men to somehow switch back and forth between some, equal rights and taking the lead in the bedroom. So I love your example because this is bedroom related, but after the fact, and you somehow called her on it.
And she got, to her credit, she got it. She was like, "You're right," and that was, and I see that as as a result of a culture that men aren't leading and they're not in an integrity. So a lot of women have just been trained to do things themselves. One very fine point on that was I said, it's fine for you to go check the sheets, but don't ask me. Once you ask me if I did, and I say I did, then don't go check the sheets. If you just go in there and check them because you want to look, that's fine. Like that's you just doing you. But like once you're in the game of polarity of like saying, "Hey, did you do this?" and I respond, and then it's like then we have to stay in that role. Otherwise, as a man, over time, if that happens 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, it's sort of like your average male just kind of like, we give up a little bit. It's like, well, she doesn't trust me or believe me anyway, so why would I even try?
So is it that men give up too early? Somehow, would it be better that somehow men, build a capacity for these somehow mini rejections of their leadership?
Hmm. I think that's it's a good question. Um, I think especially if the relationship is strong and it's like built on a good platform of love and trust and like goodwill for the other person, then especially men there, it's like your woman, she wants you to be a better leader so that you can lead her and you can lead the relationship. So reorienting your own view to knowing that when she's challenged you in a certain way, it's because she's just trying to push you up. And so if you can view as a man view it that way, can be a lot more helpful, I think, long term than feeling like you're in some kind of like sex war with your partner, or like, this kind of stuff we see on like sitcom TVs where it's just like everyone's kind of against each other. I think those, it's funny, like we laugh at these things because we know them, but most of these shows like Homer Simpson and Family Guy, all this stuff, like they make them the dads are just these weak pushover, laughable characters, and that's I think it shows a cultural reflection of how we see masculinity in men these days, and it's really, even though we laugh at some of these shows, it's kind of disgusting from another perspective.
The sense I have is that I'm going to name our conversation He Wants to Win with You, not against you. Yeah. And so, would you have any advice for both men and women on how to increase intimacy? So, you see a lot of couples, lots of singles. If there is one thing, and maybe one thing for men and one thing for women, what would be this one or two things?
I'm actually going to start with couples. What I have found is a structured context in the relationship for some regular meeting of bringing assumptions or bringing like little jabs that might have happened. That's less than, I would say, like once a week at a minimum. And so this is a way, just like, okay, we know we have 30 minutes every Sunday night, and it's an opportunity. And these are the kind of authentic relating technologies I teach, to how to speak and how to receive these type of things, to kind of get things off of our chest, to check things out. And so this way, nothing goes like longer than a week. Because my experience with couples is it's a lot of times this kind of little thing, maybe it's just a small thing that happens in our day to day interacting, but then it kind of festers inside one of the people's systems and ends up affecting interactions 2 months down the road. And so I'd say it's a sort of a relational hygiene. So just that can be really, really helpful for a chance to, um, yeah.
So, is it just not letting resentment build up?
There's a couple aspects. That's one, I would say one effect of this is like you don't, a resentment, or I like to call them withhold, something I'm not speaking,
Mhm.
um, never goes for more than a week. And a withhold can actually be a positive. Like one thing I learned in my life is that I have a deep care and appreciation for people, but I often had a hard time expressing it. And so sometimes I'd have partners come to me and be like, I don't even know if you care about me. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? And I'd say, well, you never tell me. And so this can also be something for that. This space could be like, when you did this a few days ago, it really hurt. And it can be like, God, I just love how you show up in the world, or I really appreciated how you supported me as I started this new job. And so just this time, not building resentments, and then also giving an opportunity to reveal with each other. So it's like I get to know the inner you a little bit more.
So that
Yeah.
is with couples.
Yeah.
For singles, and maybe you have a bonus if you want to have a different recommendation for men and for women, because I love what you shared
So
about couples.
for men, I'd say like number one advice is spend time with other men. And so a lot of my work does actually focus on, how do you uncover for yourself like what the relationship is that you want, and then how do you go and get it. Um, you don't. It's also like we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket, right? So a lot of people today rely on just that one other person for everything, and that is like the number one way to like depolarize, kind of lose intimacy in a relationship. So there's a lot of things you can discuss with fellow men, that it doesn't need to go to your partner, or your lover, or your girlfriend, whoever you're dating. And I would say this is same is true for women as well. Women, commonly, there is this desire. It's like, hey, I hear it. It's like I want a lover and a partner, and I want a best friend. And I believe that is like it's like sort of a beautiful intention. But often when that one person is everything, um, it just doesn't work. And so a lot of the like sharing your narrative of your day and like every little feeling that's come up for a lot of women, that's important. Like they're verbal processors. But my recommendation is use your friends for that. Creating some compartmentalization and some space from your relation, almost like magnets. You're like spend some time apart, come together, it's stronger versus like kind of being right there all the time and sharing every little detail and fact.
Do you notice that the couples who put an emphasis on best friends have a lesser sex lives, and the ones who put a emphasis on intimacy have a better sex life?
From without doing a full scientific experiment, like yes, um, and for some that may be what they choose. They may be choosing to co-parent and create a certain life, and maybe they're rock climbing partners as well, and like that's that's really their desire and intimacy is to have a best friend. Um, what it's not like all lost, however. It's just that like more effort goes into needing to create polarity and being really careful about shifting context from like, okay, we're in a friendship space and not just going right into date night or something, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour, you're going to go do your thing, and then we'll come back and have date night. So trying to, the blurry boundaries is where I think couples get in trouble with intimacy. Because, like, oh, hey, we were just best friends and now we're in the bedroom. This feels a little strange.
So I knew to pay attention to both. I had not realized until our conversation how somehow it is important to make a choice somehow between both. And it seems that it is both long term and somehow in the moment, because the person can be both the best friend and the lover, and there are best friend times and there are lover times.
Yeah, exactly. And, as the more masculine partner in most of my relationships, it's somewhat on me to define that. And so again, coming back to communication skills of like even just naming like, hey, this is what we're doing right now. Right now we're kind of in like co-parenting or like co-creating or planning a trip together. No, we're not doing the polarity game, or hey, we're in full polarity, intimacy, sexuality mode. And as a man, sometimes I can also you can learn to, just do that with your eye contact or your breath, or a certain touch on your partner's body. And if she's receptive, she'll know where you are in that moment.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
So I love to somehow extend an a dedication to all couples. May our conversation serve all singles and couples
yeah,
to increase their uh, intimate and sexual life, and also find ways to somehow, lessen the resentments and misunderstandings.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. I love that. It's almost, I would say, in a way that's um, a form of prayer. That I hold, and that's why I'm in this work because you know the vast majority of people that I know on this planet, like seeking a partnership of some form, or there are many forms of relating, but like having that deep level of intimacy is often people's number one priority, if not in their top three. And truth is, we don't grow up with parents that teach us how to do it. We don't learn it in school, and so my encouragement is like, don't just assume it's going to happen, right? Like it takes some courage, it takes some effort. It does take maybe getting coached or taking a class or two, doing some things with your partner, um, and the kind of upside of that is much more fulfilling relationships.
Well, thanks for your work and for your wisdom. If this video inspired you to create more intimacy and polarity in your relationship, I invite you to hit the like button below and subscribe so you can be notified when I publish new juicy content. Please share with anyone you think would benefit. I look forward to seeing you very soon.